Forum Borealis Paradigm Expansion.
Greetings from the north, all citizens of the world. Welcome to Forum B. Clif is back, but not to tread the mill of former topics, no. Today we have a brand new bag of goodies for you. We're gonna explore the secrets of the digital world. Everything from the dark web and hackers to social media and the censorship. I believe all the different topics we touch will appeal to many different interests. Like, are you a podcaster or a wannabe YouTuber? Are you in need of advice as to maximize your business ads? Are you looking for how to fight back against the growing online centralization and oppression? Are you clueless like me and only want to get briefed on what's what in the virtual reality? Then let Clif tell you about shadow banning, bot farms, the Utube and many more interesting facts from the bottomless pit that is the tech world. And of course, we're even going to give you a little Antarctica update. But first, let's present our guest properly. Clif, who, by the way, has removed one of the F's from his first name for efficiency's sake. He is a programmer after all, so please stop correcting our spelling of his name. Was born into a military family with a father who did intel work and so lived abroad and moved around a lot in his years of growth and formation. Though an autodidact in several areas, he's been into computers from its inception and has kept up to date, currently even teaching himself quantum computing. He's worked for Microsoft, GEC, Marconi, La Unum, Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, United Airlines, Boeing, Sybase, Sequent, and many other private and public companies as a contract software engineer and programmer. He also has a strong background in linguistics and human behavioral studies. Mr. High owns tons of wits and self-irony and humbly describes himself as an old bald guy living out in the woods, screwing around with computers. This understatement doesn't hide the fact that he programs in over a dozen computer languages and has a patent on computer-assisted reading technology which allows reading from computer screens at up to 2,000 words per minute. His claim to fame is his brilliant 93 invention called WebBot, which took until 97 for completion to get the code done. It's an internet bot computer program that, through prognostic linguistics, is able to intercept global events before they happen. The WebBot forecast has had documented successes like predicting the 13,000 Bitcoin price, 9/11, Trump's election, anthrax attack in Washington, the crash of American 587, the Colombia disaster, the Northeast power outage, the Banda Aceh earthquake, and most recently the flooding of the Red River, to name some examples. WebBot uses the Prolog AI computer language that, through words and phrase-centered process, extracts naturally occurring leaks from the collective unconscious through everyone's routine communications. He founded the Half-Past Human Adventures and offers subscription-based access to detailed reports extracted from the WebBot results. Although he doesn't write books, his many asymmetric language trend analysis, or ALTA, reports are extensive and measures up to books. He's been featured in TV like History Channel and of course magazines and innumerable podcasts and radio shows like Coast to Coast, and describes himself as a fiercely dedicated Aikidoka focused on life, freedom and the future, with a desire to free people from tyranny, reject the Fed's fake money called dollars, and embrace Bitcoin, gold, or silver. Like most geniuses, his creativity and productivity finds outlets in several areas, like his inventions in boat and water life, of which he is a passionate activist. But above all, Clif is a natural philosopher and indeed has been a yogi for over 50 years, practicing Aikido and Zazen, Shan meditation, for over 30 years. So he is a versatile fellow, though not a mere armchair philosopher who's read a few books, but a genuine psychonaut who brings to the table experience-based insights coupled with adequate intuition and educational knowledge that he has attained, often obscure, original, and peculiar nature. Indeed, that is what he also will do today, only within the binary world of ones and zeros. Welcome back to the forum, Clif.
Thank you very much. It's great to be here.
Hey, I have probably millions of questions for you, so we can probably go for...
Sure. Yeah, no worries.
Okay.
I mean, basically, Guy, I could go all damn day, except I got to help my wife, get breakfast and all that kind of stuff, right? Because I'm out in the office.
Oh, okay. I've seen that. Great. That's the building out in the forest, right?
Correct.
Yeah, look
Yes.
Great. Rather new one.
No, well, it's all redone, but the building was built maybe 1960s. It was actually built around an RV that was parked here, a recreational vehicle.
Wow.
And then, so it's very narrow, but very long. So it's an interesting place, But I'm trying to get everything ready as it is anyway for the winter because life out here is very, very harsh.
Yeah, you're talking to Norwegian.
Yeah, and exactly. And this year we'll actually have electricity when the mains go because I've got my gen set, finally all the wiring buried and everything to fix it here. That's what I'm going to be doing when we get done.
Mm-hmm. And 60s, that's just in time to maybe have picked up a ghost or two.
Well, that's fine. If they show up, they're going to work, though. There's a lot of shit that needs to be done. No free rides.
Yeah, that's right. Never let a good opportunity go to waste.
There we go.
Well, okay. Hey, man.
Yeah.
Ready to go?
Oh, sure.
For a fourth topic this time.
Exactly, yeah.
And it will probably please some of our listeners, at least those we picked up who didn't know me already, that this topic I don't know too much about, so I'll shut more up today. There's always someone who desires that. So you get your wish today, probably. So, not sure about the title, but we're gonna move into the world of the digital world. Not so much Bitcoin and stuff, but more about the algorithms, the big tech companies, how stuff is going.
Cool.
So today, what I thought, I'm not sure. I have to see how the conversation goes, but I've been playing around with the title "Digital Secrets."
Okay.
But they are, of course, public secrets. But it's a good enticer, I think.
Oh yeah, very nice. Yeah.
I just have to default to the commercial regards because, the Antarctica series, boom, one of our most popular, right?
Right.
The Consciousness series had a very boring title.
Right.
And the name Clif Hyde is kind of lost in behind because YouTube doesn't afford full titles, right?
Sure.
So now I'm thinking something short and sweet and enticing because we can't negotiate with the contents. There we have to stick to our guns. But for the title, that can be a clickbait, I think. So Digital Secrets, maybe.
It sounds, yeah. I mean, let's see how things work out. You never know. Universe will provide.
Yeah.
I actually like Digital Karma better than Digital Secrets.
Yeah, Digital Karma. That's a good idea. But I've made following preparations. I listened to the show you did with Jay, I think. Jay and the Blue Chicken Cult. Yeah, and Groovy.
Yeah. And Reality Check. Yeah.
Yeah, I listened to both those, and I stumbled over a kind of similar theme you did with a musician, of all things.
MG the Future. Yeah, he's a cool kid. Yeah.
Yeah. So between those, I think I have enough clues to pick your brain.
Okay, well, let's have at it before it all falls out.
Yeah, excellent. Then I'll start. And I think we can start this by me bitching about how we have been faring. Because I've noticed the YouTube algorithm, because many people now, they want to become big on YouTube. They realized, a little too late if you ask me, what's possible.
Correct, right.
And so they start their YouTube channels, and it's like they're all dressed up and nowhere to go. Nothing happens for them.
Yeah.
Because what they don't realize is what I realized. I have to toot my own horn here. I realized it before it was fully evident. Back in 2014-15, and I talked about it on air, so that's the evidence. I said, okay, Google has bought up YouTube. Google is in bed with all the mainstream media, but not only the same companies that own the mainstream media, they're also in bed with the goddamn advertisers, who has been reluctant for the longest time to get online, because if this was a free and organic market, they would have flushed online with money a long time ago. But they have deliberately been sitting on the fence. And so I said, look, here's what's going on. YouTube is gonna be a retirement home for the old stream media.
Right.
And gradually they're gonna squeeze out independent media, because they can't do it overnight. They will lose all the audience, which is what they need. And that is my cue to, you can take this and run with it if you have some thoughts about it.
It's it's both complicated and complex. Mm-hmm. So because there's so many different moving parts and so many different layers, we need to make sure that we put little pointers and don't get lost on our journeys here on this. Okay, but YouTube being purchased by Google might have been part of some master plan being run by intelligence agencies to consolidate social media, a la the Chinese, towards a social credit system which allows, let's call it very politely, administration of large populations via digital means that you couldn't achieve otherwise. And let's divert for a second and say that the Chinese are the most successful conquerors in history, bar none. Okay, they are so far above all other people in conquering that, and there's the rub. Most people don't understand now that conquering doesn't simply mean coming on in and destroying your village. Anybody can come and bomb you back to the Stone Age. But the Chinese knew how to conquer a place, which meant that they knew how to take it over and administer it and milk it, harvest it, long after the fighting had stopped.
Yeah, George Bush should have hired China to take over, Iraq back in the day.
That would have assumed that was our goal. Okay, right. I'm of the opinion that our military-industrial complex never wants to own any real estate after they've destroyed it. They don't really even want to rebuild it so much, right? The whole goal of it is to simply that's another diversion. Anyway, so back to the Chinese. The Chinese understand that in order to control a population that they'd subjugated, they needed to have at least 20% of that population be Han Chinese. So they would move in this 20% of their own population. Now, Han Chinese are the main racial group out of the 140 racial groups identified in mainland China. The Han Chinese are not the most numerous, but they are the most powerful because they've been associated the longest with the power structure, including going back as far as the Yellow Emperor. So they've had a long history of knowing how to wield power. And basically, the Chinese government offers incentives to young Han Chinese to relocate to distressed areas. And these young Han Chinese, taking advantage of these offers, are able to amass fortunes in an otherwise resource-constrained environment. So basically what happens is the Chinese government, the officialdom, opens up a pathway for the entrepreneurial spirit among their own people, and using that entrepreneurial spirit in their own plan, they get these Han Chinese to settle, and then they've got a conduit to controlling that local population. Now, even today, they are using this mechanism, although the Chinese government has long been in the process of migrating over to what we now know is called the social credit system. And this is an interesting construct when one examines its basic core. And the basic core is that it can be stated that the social credit system is a mechanism whereby the resources that are allocated to you in a digitally controlled environment can be constrained by by your accumulated behavioral scores. Okay, so now bear in mind, in a social credit system, as we think of it here in the West, if we use those same terms, and that's not really what the Chinese call it, but that's what our media has called it, which gets us back to YouTube and Google and the media structure. But a social credit system in no way takes into account your social status. It doesn't take into account your status among any particular group or any particular tribe, digital or otherwise. It doesn't take into account your race, your identity, your gender, or any of this. All it takes into account, all it is a running record of your online behavior that can be captured digitally.
How good of a bot you are, basically.
I wouldn't.
Obedient citizen.
How obedient you are to this power structure. That would be a much better way of looking at it. Okay, we've got to be very clear on our terms because it's easy to get muddied. The subject is very complex, and most people's eyes glaze over once you start talking about digital crap, right? Because most people don't understand the technology, which I have to say, in these days is. Very life-threatening, can be very life-threatening. Ignorance can cause you to have a social blunder that is not a social blunder in any real way, but becomes so because of algorithmic capture and magnification of that social blunder, and you end up in all kinds of world of hurt, and you had no intention of going there, right? So in this sense, you have to be aware of the digital environment you're living in because you're generating digital demerits that the powers that be will use in their very skewed version of digital karma. And so, as understanding this, and now we're all being controlled by the algorithms themselves as the power structure is altered around us within this digital environment. It can get really hairy. So it has already affected everybody's life, and it's going to become increasingly effective of our lives as we go forward over the next decade, absent some kind of basically global catastrophe. I mean, the momentum is there to continue growing, right, in terms of all of these impacts. Now, it's interesting that I was correct that the impetus for 5G would run into some serious blowback and start failing. But I don't see that as being necessarily an impediment to any of the digital corralling that's going on within the media at the moment.
Hang on. We got some, maybe a shill, I don't know, someone commenting upon our consciousness talk. And hey, Clif High fans out there, check out our consciousness talk. We discuss AI, we discuss transhumanism. But someone accused you of promoting 5G. I couldn't get that to compute at all. Could you make the record straight?
Sure. Yeah, that was a misunderstanding. I wasn't promoting 5G. I was stating I'd been asked weird kind of a question. And the question was, what could be the reason that 5G would be out there in this particular discussion we were having? This was with Rex Bear at the Leak Project, okay? And we were discussing the potential, or the idea that potentially there's a replacement for humanity being introduced right now into our environment via alien-human hybrids, okay? And I said, and this was a role-playing exercise that has some roots in deep reality. And at that point, I said, well, if one was in the power structure, a side benefit of 5G is the military. Not only is it a carrier wave for information and TV and all of that kind of crap, but the military could use it to do genome or gene level scanning of individuals within this 5G matrix, because 5G is the exact same wavelength that was used in the TSA backscanner viewer machines, right? And 5G scattered from all of the brick surfaces around you and steel surfaces, etc., in a modern urban environment is essentially walking into a backscanner radiation device. If one had the mechanism for pulling out the information, they could do exactly the same kind of thing there on any street corner in a 5G irradiated city that one could do in a 5G backscanning device TSA security thing at an airport. And by the way, 5G goes down to the level of the DNA in your skin. Jeez. And it sends back that level of information about your genes, because the first use for that wavelength was within laboratories. One of the first uses was within laboratories as basically a DNA microscope.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And no, I was not in any way promoting 5G or saying it was a good thing. I was just saying from the viewpoint of the powers that be, it might be, and actually I did go so far as to say the military mind would find that, okay, if we put that it might be acceptable to have 12% of the population die early through the introduction of 5G in order to find out where all the alien hybrids are. In other words, it would be a strategic.
Yeah, or if they have other genetic homicidal thoughts.
Correct.
You know?
Right. So I wasn't promoting it in any way, shape, or form. Mm-hmm. It's a good carrier wave, but at a huge cost on economically, energetically, and physically.
And nature and animals, birds, bees, you name it. It's horrible. But we'll not dwell too much on 5G. It's already a lot of it out there. Let's get back to Google and YouTube. I sense there was more musings.
All right. So this is an interesting world in which we find ourselves, and I agree with you that we're past the peak of easy path to riches via YouTube videos, right? And that's what a lot of people saw, was that, oh, geez, if I could come up with something that got 1 million people to follow me, I don't ever have to work again in my life, so I'll go buy this, phone for $300 or on some plan and start making videos off my phone. And
suckers, I'll tell them, it's a lot of work. At least if you want to do quality shows, it's a lot of work. There's no free lunch.
No. Screw quality. Just doing crap is a lot of work.
Oh, right.
And not putting any effort into it is a lot of work.
Yeah, I know.
And you're gonna burn out quick, and the statistics are way against you, and most videos suck. And unless you've got the capability and interest in doing the editing and the other post-production work, you're not going to claim a lot of people's attention. We're in a global human attention market, and it is a truism to say that 60% of all videos get less than 500 views.
Wow.
Okay, and so if that's the case, so no wonder some people are millionaires, right? Because they've got the millions of followers. But they had an early adopter edge in the fact. And in addition to that, these are the ones that are still there after this early adopter edge are the smart ones that reinvested in their own career with sophisticated editing or hiring sophisticated editors, buying the capability to upgrade, up-level their offerings such that they're able to keep their share of the attention market going forward. And you'll note that they've got to suffer and sweat and work their ass off, and it's a daily battle. And look at how at a middle level, some of these guys are having to produce 3 and 4 videos a day. So they're working 9 hours a day in front of camera or editing or uploading, that kind of thing, in order to have a marginal kind of an existence, really, because now, after the third round of the adpocalypse, ad revenues suck. And unless you're doing something else with your entree, I never see. Okay, so when YouTube came around in 2009 with Power, I saw what it was, but never, even though they started offering partnerships, never anticipated that I would ever be bound by ad revenue, because my whole point of always using YouTube was basically low cost TV commercials, if you will, right? And as opposed to trying to produce the content itself that would then later be sold. And what YouTube did was to monetize everybody as content creators and tack ads onto them all. And then they started off this interesting metamorphosis of the advertising industry globally. And it's been really staggeringly effective. They've basically got 100% market domination, and it's very interesting from the perspective of someone who's actually advertised through Google and YouTube and so on, and Twitter et al., and watching what's going on, especially somebody like myself who's a programmer and looks at what the algorithms are doing on the that I'm interacting with. Because, okay, so...
Hang on. I need to bitch, because
Sure.
the algorithm is rigged against our format. You know, we do old school long form, right?
Right.
And that means we can't release 3-4 shows a day. We're barely able to release a couple of shows a month. And I've noticed that in the beginning, when I was so lucky, because when we started, it was at the end of the possibility. And that got us go. We just came in the door before they, shut it tight.
Right.
But in the beginning, if you went to one of our videos, first off, you would see, on the right column where they advertise other videos, you would see half of them were ours, right? So lazy people who don't check out what's going on, they just see, oh, here's another one interesting from the forum. Okay.
Right.
And the other half would be other independent creators who had relevant stuff. But today, if you go to almost any video, it has to be extremely obscure for this not to happen. Most of what you will see is mainstream, like Comedy Central, MSNBC, bullshit like that. And if you're lucky, you'll get one of your own videos at the end. Even if it's a part 1, part 2, part 3, as we often do. Because even our bright audience can't handle 4 hours in one video. So we divide it.
Yeah.
Even there, you won't see necessarily part 2 as the next natural step, which is insane. So I think it's rigged against rare release and long form. And for some reason, they want people to...
No. YouTube hates you. I mean, you just have to understand that, right?
Yeah.
YouTube needs you desperately. Google needs you desperately, but they really detest you. And it's like everybody else. It has nothing to do with your format per se, although let me tell you that long form has two major disadvantages right at the moment. Okay, we need to divert into that. Long form actually has got YouTube in a very perplexed situation relative to the algo, because long form seriously draws human attention. It seriously draws that human attention from a hardcore group that will always, no matter what the subject, go through the entire video. But most of that audience Most of that audience will not. So mostly, lots of people will brush up against your video. So let's say that there's 30 to 40% that initially will watch just a few minutes up to, say, a half an hour, and then they'll drop out. But what really...
Or they just download it for later.
Correct. Or so in other words, though, but as far as YouTube is concerned, that's off the books, right? They can't charge advertising for that. Yeah. Okay. So what annoys them about this kind of thing, though, is that long form is the serious draw on YouTube. It always has been, and it's really evolved into more so. However, it doesn't make them a whole lot of dollars for advertising. And the reason that they put that the algo is structured the way it is now is that it is entirely advertising related. Okay, so this is where it gets really complex as well as complicated. Okay, so there's many layers to this, but fundamentally, YouTube wants to make a ton of money. and YouTube and Google are both being used by the powers that be for gross social engineering. But we're going to look at the economic aspects of this as though that social engineering didn't participate. YouTube actually makes more money with a weird little tactic that they're basically using against their advertisers. And so this was what came about as at the end of the first revision, okay, in which recommendations went away. You used to be able on YouTube to say, I recommend this channel, and I recommend that channel. And whoever came to see your videos would see the recommendations you had made. And so this was a way of linking. And then YouTube discovered that this was there was a hack that they could employ against this. And they eventually, over the course of like 18 months, removed the ability for you to put recommended videos on there in a meaningful fashion that your viewers would see. And the reason they did this had to do entirely with advertising. So they get you to watch, or you get somebody to watch your video. And it doesn't matter its length. We'll leave that aside at the moment. But let's come back to that. And so if somebody watches your video, if they watch another one of your videos, insofar as advertising is concerned, you are still operating within the behavior matrix for the keywords for that video you just watched, because the video you're about to watch is from that same producer, and that same producer is not likely to have an entirely different set of keywords on their offering. They're likely to have a core of keywords that are the same from video to video to video. So if you're in the conspiracy business and I'm watching your conspiracy video, I'm not likely to watch your next, and I watch your next video is not likely to be cooking or dog grooming, okay? Mm-hmm. And so as a result of which there's no up-leveling on their part of demand on differing keywords. So the system becomes more quiescent and more static, which means that there's less bidding going on, so their bidding wars are less dynamic, because look at what YouTube managed to do, and Google, all right? Mm-hmm. They managed to monetize words. All right, you think your videos are monetized and that they're paying you advertising. That's really a misapprehension of what's going on, because what's going on is that they monetized words through this AdWords or keywords concept, and that is that they can isolate through algorithms the words that are used in your video, that the words you and I are using at this moment, the words you put into the description and into all the tags, and they can sort these and collect them into a blob that can be identified insofar as advertising is concerned. And so if I were an advertiser, I could say, I've got a product here, okay? I'm selling actual tin foil hats. All right. And so I want to sell actual tinfoil hats, which cost me a lot of money to manufacture and even more money to ship. And you wouldn't believe how expensive tin is and stuff. So I can't afford to screw around. I've been told by my advertising guys, I can't afford to just have a half-assed media policy. Mm-hmm. And so I get these advertising guys, and everybody goes along with this idea because it seems to make sense at its core. And that is that, well, what we'll do is we'll target people on YouTube, and we'll make ourselves a little YouTube video about how cool our tinfoil hats are and the many styles we've got, and we'll make this fit down to less than a minute, just like it was a regular TV ad, and we'll put it on YouTube. And so now what we need to do is we need to find, where do we have that ad show up? And the way we do that is by going and looking for YouTubers that are using the same kind of language as are the people that we know want to buy our tinfoil hat, or we suspect want to buy our tinfoil hat, right? Mm-hmm. And so we will go to YouTube and say, please, YouTube, can you put our ad in front of somebody's video, attached to somebody's video who's going to be talking about conspiracy crap? And we want it to not only be conspiracy crap, we want it to be the following color, flavor, and smell of conspiracy crap. Mm-hmm. And YouTube says, choose your words. And that's where you get into this weird thing. And this weird thing is competition, because you're actually bidding on words. So Al, he's got a video that has got every one of the keywords I want to put in on. But unfortunately, those keywords are also being sought by two manufacturers or two importers of Chinese spy cameras who want to also go to the same market of conspiratorial paranoids. And we're bidding against each other for YouTube to put our ad there. And YouTube doesn't have to go to any more work to put their ad there or our ad there. And it costs them exactly the same to put our ad in or their ad there, and yet all of a sudden, because we think those words are more meaningful to us and we're willing to pay for them, we end up saying we'll pay more than those Chinese spy camera importers. And Bob's your uncle. We have the system we've got now where YouTube is just grinning like a Cheshire cat saying, y'all bid against each other, and we're quite happy to take this huge amount of arbitrage over doing the same exact amount of really non-work because we went to the trouble of writing a piece of software to do all this shit for us.
Makes perfect sense. When I used Facebook back in the day, shame to say, but it worked well in the beginning because in the beginning small businesses could use it. And I ran my own little meditation school up here in the north. We were...
You mean for when the people thaw it out?
Pardon?
I say for when the people thaw it out. You were there so they could meditate.
I didn't get that
anyway,
one.
Lost in the translation.
But we were the only school who had all 7 meditation forms. Wow. So I used that. I targeted my audience, and I could, like you say, you could literally choose words and interests and all sorts of target group data. And I'm assuming it's kind of the same going on at YouTube, only I didn't know. I thought YouTube chose it for them. I didn't know they were choosing it themselves. Do they have the brains to do that themselves?
No, you don't.
In your example, by the way, if someone was selling tinfoil hats and they would do that, they would fail big time because who would it be advertised to? Skeptics. They are usually those who use the word tinfoil hat, right? So they wouldn't reach the real target. So that's how you can fail in this algorithm business if you don't know what you're doing.
Oh, hey, it's endemic. It's cliche that people losing their shirt especially with YouTube advertising. Oh, wow. It was so bad. I wrote a book on how to dominate online advertising and had it out there on my site. And because I do software and understood what was going on at a macro level and how they were having everybody bid against each other, I thought, well, screw this. I wanted to do some advertising. I didn't really need to. I wanted to see if I was, I wanted to challenge myself to see if my understanding was accurate. So I thought I'd put my money where my mouth was, and I advertised both on YouTube and on Twitter. And I ran into all kinds of people because I joined the advertiser communities, and it is just filled with individuals that have lost thousands, tens of thousands of dollars on the wrong choice of words on YouTube ads. And the real horror is that you may set limits and not understand on those limits how quickly you're going to arrive at them, right? And so there's various different ways on so yes, on YouTube you can choose all of this. You can, even now, I haven't advertised on YouTube in many years, so I don't know what the evolution of the settings are, but at the time that I was doing it, you couldn't choose individual channels to advertise on, but you could almost do that by going in on both demographics and keywords. All right, so if you had the right demographics, you're basically you could say, I want to advertise on channels that are only being viewed by people that also watch Alvin. Okay, so you could narrow it down to some significant degree just by doing that. And then if you put in the appropriate keywords, it was almost a lock that you could get it down right to the individual channel. But most people probably didn't do this. They didn't have the skills, knowledge, time, et cetera, to jump into it. And so within the YouTube and other advertising communities online, the actual advertisers, not the people doing the work, but the people paying the bills, there's just story after story after story where a guy says, damn, he said I was, working. This one guy in particular, he says, working real hard. I don't know his particulars. I got the impression he was in some major city on the East Coast U.S., and he'd had a couple of beers with his friends, went home and worked on his sideline business, set up some things for some advertising, pushed the button and set it off, went to bed and woke up $100,000 in debt, scrambling to kill the advertising because he had skewed. There was a thing that said limit it to $1,000, and he thought that meant per day, and the way it was. It was just poorly structured, right? And so he ends up $100,000 in debt over the course of like 7 or 8 hours because things move so fast that way. Now, ultimately, I mean, I did follow up, and it was probably 3 or 4 weeks after that he actually got the returns in, and this guy was somewhat fortunate in that he did have a big pickup. In his sales, but he still ended up in net loss on this, and was just he said never ever have beer before doing online advertising.
Yeah, you have to be careful when you fill it out. I made it a sport because I stopped. I was so old school that I started out with posters.
Sure.
But after Facebook opened for small-time advertisement, I just stuck to that. But this was in the heyday of Facebook, right? When the young people were there, everybody were there.
Right.
Now it's like, if you really want to be out, you hang on Facebook. But here's the thing. I never realized YouTube also were targeting small advertisers, because today is just a huge one. And they've opened for, I'll tell you, you probably don't know since you haven't been using it for a while. I can now go into AdSense and deselect certain areas of advertisement, which I do for my karma. Like the military, no way they're going to advertise at my videos. So I have that little control. But if you look at who advertise, it's just huge corporations. And I think it's because they've opened now the floodgates for those who used to, dominate the TV market and radio are now coming in because they are satisfied that, okay, this is controlled by our people. So, because the last thing they want is for their own companies, sister companies, daughter companies, to give money to the independent people who in the outset are screwing them over.
Correct.
You know what I mean?
I agree with that. Yeah. Let's look at it as though a different understanding. The reason that those companies are there on YouTube and the other online media is because the old media is dying. All right. So they've got to go, and that's why there's this huge push now for censorship, because the censorship is necessary to produce exactly the conditions you're describing, where their various corporations don't get shit and don't give money to people that are giving them shit. Right. And so Monsanto doesn't want to advertise and ultimately end up giving money to people on farms that are going to sue them. And this kind of situation must exist, that Monsanto has to be moving online because their old frame of reference is no longer the frame for the social order. In fact, it's broadcast media is dying off with that generation. And so it's become imperative that they move over. And that's what forced the political pressure on the social platforms to adopt this latest round, which is what you were describing in the first part of the show, that produces the CNN listings as the next video up being offered after yours, off on the other side. And the autoplay, you'll see it's a mainstream media or whatever, and this is the same impetus that had them put the little disclaimers. So if you were to say the word, about atmospheric aerosol vapors, and you use that one particular word, you're going to see something underneath. Your viewers will see something underneath this video that says, blah, 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 that's a bunch of bullshit. This is all a conspiracy. Their whole truth in presentation crap, right? Which we actually know is an attempt to maintain the mainstream paradigm against all the people that are providing alternative information, also under the guise of truth.
Yeah, the official term is manufacturing consent.
Okay, there you go. There you go.
But I totally agree that market monopolism, rigging the market, is part of this mechanism. But I suspect, and here's where I'm putting on my tinfoil hat, I suspect that it's also ideology, or maybe that's the wrong word because they really have no ideology. I think it's like a brutish, it's a kind of a conspiracy of survival. It's like, look, we're not just going to rig this stuff. We're going to target everyone who has the opinions that are not compatible with our paradigm, the one we are selling, the establishment, right? So it's like a political concern in addition to a commercial concern. Both cases, it's obviously rigged. It's corporatism.
Right.
But I think we should really start entertaining. But, first they came for Alex Jones, right? Everybody said it back then. Just like they said about the Epstein case. They said he's going to die. They said the same about Alex Jones. This is just the beginning. They're taking the extremes. And drip, gradual incrementalism, and now, lo and behold, they are censoring every independent. Look, people, it's not just the alt-right. That's the big myth out there, that it's like some kind of left-wing conspiracy. The corporatism has no ism. If you are populist on the left, they will target you. If you're anarchist and on no wings, they will target you. If, on the other hand, you are the corporate left or the corporate right, then go at it, because they need that false dichotomy out there. Yeah. But they are targeting like anti-war, you name it, and that's just political. And they have this thing, like, you can't talk about, for example, terrorism in the AdSense triggers, right? Terrorism. Right. They don't distinguish between if you are Daesh, that means ISIS, you Americans. So if you are Daesh and you put out a propaganda video telling how wonderful it is to kill the infidels, then that may get targeted for some weird reason. It really does, actually. But that's the excuse that they're going to get rid of that. But if you're like, let's say, an independent news reporter and you're actually highlighting terrorism and are against terrorism, I shouldn't say the word, now they'll demonetize this vid too. Right. Then they say, it's just the same thing. And everybody protested it, but to no avail. We can't distinguish. Okay. But then enter the mainstream media. They do the same, talk about, let's say, terrorism, and they are let alone.
Well, okay, but look.
Complete rigging of the system.
Okay, all right. This is a complete rigging, but understand why this is occurring. Okay, this is not a conspiracy. This is a limitation in software. It is easy to say anything that fucking CNN says gets through the screen. Mm-hmm. CNN is excluded from any kind of algo involvement. Same thing with MSNBC or anybody that pays us whopping great amount of money as advertisers. Right. It's easy to do that because you have a known set entity. So you just basically put an exception into the algo that if the very first thing it looks for is any one of the our friends' names. If our friends' names are in the video anywhere, we let it through under these conditions. Right. And it's simply that they cannot distinguish. So if I make a video with appropriate language, they can't tell if I'm a good guy or a bad guy because software is basically friggin' stupid. Mm-hmm. It's being written by stupid people that don't understand the nature of the problem, don't understand the nature of what solutions are offered, write bad code that just simply may work and may work incorrectly. In fact, most of the code being written in the last 30 years is actually inaccurate and incorrect in any number of ways. And this is the system that we have to live in. So I dispute that there's an incremental squeezing of the gonads by the powers that be on any given individual, and I resist the idea that any given individual is targeted, and I can say that that's the case until they rise to a certain level. And thus
not individual, I'd rather say independent populists.
Yeah, no, see, it doesn't matter to me because I'm quite certain that the powers that be have no loyalty one way or another to any ideology. It is useful for them because it is extremism. It has no limits on it. The direction it goes to always leads to mass murder, which is something that is good for the powers that be, because in the condition of the Hegelian dialectic with the mass murder and so on, it allows the authoritarians to have more control, and this keeps them in power. But even the authoritarians are involved in the system, surrounded by the system, and are dominated by the very systems that they're setting up. Now, my particular bent is to understand things across a single well, or in a time span that is greater than this single body's lifespan.
Right.
And so I see myself having lived a previous life during a period of time that coincided with the Roman Empire. Mm-hmm. And so now I'm living this life. And so I can see that there were parallels in the time that my previous life, what was going on then, and I see that there are things that are being done at a level that is beyond a single human lifespan. So in other words, I actually am of the opinion that it was meaningful that one of the first things that Obama did after he was put in the presidency by the powers that be was that he had a little jaunt down to Egypt to look at that image of himself from his previous life in the Pharaohic dynasties.
Right, I've heard about that.
Okay,
yeah.
Okay, and that is not that's not alone. All right, so I knew this guy who was working at a subcontractor for the U.S. military, who was or the U.S. military industrial complex, who was running a project that was digitally scanning images of art and photos of sculptures and all of these kind of things, and they were doing facial recognition on it. And they tried to hire me at one point to do some software programming on them with them, which is why I became aware of the project. Mm-hmm. And the idea of the project was to hunt faces of individual famous people across time, because they were quite convinced, these famous people, that they had in fact lived across time. And one of the things I happen to know to be true, to be factual, is that your face does not vary much from incarnation to incarnation in an incremental fashion.
Lucky for me.
Well, not so lucky for me. I've been bald for who knows how many lives.
The male pattern baldness also hunts us.
Oh, hey, it's karmic. It's karmic, and it's deep karma.
Jeez. Well, I think we'll break that karma when we crack the code, you know. They're researching that.
There you go. Yeah. But see, here's the thing. So my view of all of this is a little bit wacky and a little bit different, in the sense that I don't ascribe malice to the forces of technology and how software works. There's a lot of shit that's forced, a lot of actions and behavior that is forced on management at all kinds of levels due to the constraints of what the software can provide. Mm-hmm. And under the circumstances, they come up with a plan then to try to achieve the goals that they're being given. All right. So the people that we think of as the masters of the universe, you know, they're running the tech empires and stuff. Well, their history, if they don't kowtow to what the powers that be want, and if they fail to deliver, they'd better have just boatloads of excuses and a bunch of lieutenants that they can behead in penance, you know, and it truly is that way. So, you know, we see an example of it right away. And that example right away was, as you've stated, Epstein. Here was a guy that was, you know, a minion of the powers that be, was protected even after his nefarious activities were discovered. He had a good run. He ran a number of years. But as soon as he became a liability that had no countervailing value, he was history. He's gone. He's out of there, right? Mm. And they didn't care how, basically, they didn't really care how messy it got, because messiness fades with the time very rapidly in our consciousness. So they think.
Not just that, but after 9/11, they are brazen. Before 9/11, they tried to pretend to keep the face up. Mm-hmm. Now they know they can get away with anything. You can be a war criminal and you be hailed at your funeral. So now they really don't care, not even keeping up charades.
Okay,
so they don't even care that everybody realizes this is a conspiracy, even the skeptics.
Okay, there's the problem though, Guy. We are not on the same page there. I believe they care very intently. I believe that it is that.
Then they are inept. Then they are completely incompetent.
No, it's not that at all. The situation is just as I've stated. They are facing a problem here, and that problem is that the software that they want to use to control them. Okay, their problem is there's a shitload of us and very few of them. Mm-hmm. Where there's a whole damn planet of us and very few of them. Yeah. All right, so they need to control us, and so their problem, and they've controlled us through deception and a very intractable and extremely complex power structure all of these centuries. Mm-hmm. Now they're faced with the following. The same technology that they were going to use to control the enlarging mass of the population, because we're breeding a hell of a lot faster than them. So the ratio is changing rapidly, and they needed to get a digital up leg to continue to control us. But that same technology is also liberating to us, and it provides a dichotomy, a dynamism that they've never faced before. And so it's not that they don't care; it's that they've got time pressures, and they're trying to evolve a different understanding, as we all are, of the social order as humans merge with technology and we go forward. So they can't have the internet go out unfettered, or you have people screaming about all of the shit that the powers that be are doing and detailing it into a level of accuracy that will at some point galvanize people, the general mass, into actions. This cannot be allowed from the viewpoint of the powers that be. So everything needs to be controlled, but they're constrained by what they can do with that software. It's very difficult. I laughingly watched these videos of the what I call the persecuted ones, okay? And these are all these individuals that are in the woo-woo community that get up and make videos about being targeted individuals. And these people are expressing an absolute classic, in most cases, persecution complex as is defined by the psychiatric community, right? And when they're doing this, though, many of them are saying, well, my PC got hacked or my phone got hacked or any of that kind of stuff. And it's like, my God, do you realize what it actually takes to hack into an individual phone or an individual PC, the information you've got to know? This is not something that can just be done by deciding, oh, okay, let's go hack, Joe Bob. He pissed me off when he, talked to me in the diner and I didn't want him to talk to me, right? Okay, there's all different kinds of technical barriers to this sort of thing, regardless of, totally eliminating any legal or moral or ethical kind of barriers. The amount of people that get involved with that kind of thing is quite staggering.
Are you talking about like the tech companies now? Because Snowden revealed that if you are an intern, right. no education at NSA, you could target your ex and stuff like that.
Sure. Okay, so I was just going to say, there is the hole in all of this, all right? And the hole in all of this is that there are power structures that have built these tech companies that are basically technological pyramids, and these machines, the technological pyramids, are designed to provide technical services that also allow them to target individuals through the gathering of data. Okay. Now, Snowden, in his revelations there, he was in no way able to hack into his girl's phone and leave a message on there, or to hack into his ex-girlfriend's phone and he could capture information about her that she was already putting out online. So we're in this interest. That's why tech companies provide us with all these digital assistants to get more information about you, to get another wedge in there for this control. But in the main, they are also prisoners of the very software that they're creating. And so there are examples of individuals being targeted. But look at the number of individuals on YouTube alone that are claiming that they're that they're targeted individuals and are getting death rays shot at them and all of this kind of stuff, right?
Yeah, any accident in their life is obviously a conspiracy against them. Yeah.
Correct. See, so I'm not promoting any of that because I know that the software is, I know from having worked in the phone company that unless you have the authority and the built-in device infrastructure of an organization like the CIA or a major telco or a major other service provider to a telco, it is actually rather difficult to hack an individual cell phone because of the triangulation necessary and the cell tower kind of stuff necessary. And you see this in anything you've seen on TV about cloning phones and all of this kind of thing is very loosely constructed. So let me point out something. You will frequently see on TV where the mechanism being offered by the writers is that the guy gets knocked out or the woman is given a roofie or something, and during the period of time they're knocked out, someone comes in and they take the SIM card out of their phone and they put it in this other weird-looking phone and they clone the SIM card. All right? and then they put the SIM card back into your phone and put their clone SIM supposedly their clone SIM card into another phone, and supposedly every time your phone gets a ring and gets a phone call or does a text or does anything, that SIM card vibrates and is activated in sympathetic response. And here's the problem with that. That kind of shit breaks cell systems. I know because I worked for the cell providers, and I have a real good friend of mine who spent 15 or 20 years as the cell tower masters for Region 10, which is 11 Western states. And the problem is that the software at that level knows there's two SIM cards that are working on the same number that have different locations. And you're gonna send out basically a resolution request message within the software that says basically, what the hell? Because it knows that it needs to know, especially these days, location-wise. And so that instantly creates a problem in the database. And all this stuff is being logged. And it's being logged in databases that frequently things like law enforcement overlook, which are all the backup databases, right? All of this kind of thing. But it causes problems to do those kind of hacking sorts of things within the functioning environment unless you have the authority. Now, if you're the CIA, you can do that. And then when that flag is thrown, when that secondary clone cell phone SIM card fires off, there will already be a suppressor factor in the database that says, don't worry about it. And so under those circumstances, the CIA can get away with it, but telcos even themselves can't get away with it. So I used to, the classic story is this friend of mine who managed the cell towers in the early days when we were still talking about Gen 2 and cell towers, and there were actually very few on the I-5 corridor. We had just that kind of a thing where a guy tried to clone the SIM card of his ex-wife. and it was known about that night, and my friend who worked at the cell company that got a phone call in the middle of the night saying, hey, buddy, you better get here. Something wacko's going on. And he went on up there, and it took him maybe 5 hours to figure out what was going on once they put the location thing on it. And they just sent somebody to the second cell phone and found out that, well, shit, it's, one of our employees' ex-wife. And he got all kinds of shit and was fired. But, so that kind of stuff is not that easy.
Yeah, that must be long ago if it had consequences.
Oh, this was, this was 89 maybe, yeah.
I would expect some kind of consequence then, yeah.
Oh, and there's the rub these days, is that the planet has grown, the population has grown, the technology is making the population grow exponentially relative to data, which swamps everything, and all of our systems are built. So we're at a crisis point, all right? Our social order is a crisis point, and that's why I've really gone to some trouble to isolate myself, because I expect all of society to come undone at the seams, not because of the extra radiations coming in from space that are making everybody combative, although that's an interesting that is juxtaposed against our current social strain. But here's why I expect it to come apart. All of our social structures are designed and carryovers from artifacts, if you will, from a previous age. And all of the previous ages, there's a giant disconnect between those ages and our current technology. So the technological disconnect is larger than our species gives credit to as software comes full circle to eat and participate in basically all aspects of our lives. So in other words, we can get along with trains going faster and faster and faster and faster, evolutionary over time, train technology just gets better, et cetera, and so on. However, our social structures that allowed us to know how many trains to build, to know how many tracks to build, to anticipate and plan for increasing rail traffic, or to socially engineer increasing rail traffic, as opposed in a thing of climate change, et cetera, to cut down on airplane traffic, all of these kind of things. The social structures, the dynamic social structures, are what is breaking down. So these days, if government comes on out anywhere on this planet and says, it says that we need to build more trains because it's in our economic interest to do so, and because it's a social engineering that is good for the society and good for the planet, we nonetheless have a huge level of problem because it will take them a lot longer to sell that proposition than they might have been able to do so absent the current technology that we're involved in. And then once that social consensus is reached, it's going to take some considerable time to coordinate everything to pull in all the resources. Okay, so let me provide a little hint as to some of the thinking there, and we can use as an example the Panama Canal. Okay, the Panama Canal was dug at huge expense, financial, in life, limb, and resources. Right now,
when was it again?
1800s. Okay.
Oh, that long ago.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. That was the first part of the planning for the Panama Canal, and it took. So this is my thing. Basically, it took us 100 years to decide we needed, and then to follow the vision of the people that decided we needed, and then to complete the process of digging a canal through Panama, right? And so the process begins, and it takes 100 years to get there. That was in a period of time when it was when money dictated. So if I went and I said, and money and political power dictated. So if I went to somebody and said, we need to harvest your forests to build railroad ties for the Panama Canal railroads, those forests would be harvested. These days, on the other hand, we've got computers that are going to be, and software that is going to be used basically against each other. It's going to actually take more time and energy to do anything on that level now because of the technology that's intruding that may in fact even be telling us we need to do that. Because right now, okay, so say we decided that we can't have air travel. Say that the government knows after all their research, and we can get into that later, but they say, okay, we can't have a common man traveling by airplanes 50 years from now just because of the climate damage, okay, the damage to our atmosphere. Ergo, we need to have another way for common man to move because common man will insist on moving. So let's convert everybody over to trains that are now going on airplane. And then they figure out that, okay, there's, umpty.
Trains on airplanes?
No, trains instead of airplanes. Okay, so the number of people that are
hyper fast. Yes.
Okay, so what I'm saying is we've got a number of people right now that are going on airplanes, and the goal of government is to shut down airlines,
right,
and convert everybody over to trains. And so they can figure out how many people are on planes now, make a projection as to how many people would be on planes if they were allowed, and figure out how many trains we need to build. And so they come up with this huge, massive amount of numbers for number of trains that are going to have to be built over the next 50 years to get this plan accomplished. And there's a big stumbling block right from the get-go, and that is that in order to start building the railroad tracks for those trains, we need to harvest all of the forests in Oregon and Washington and Northern California over the course of these next 50 years. And instantly, the software that would start allocating those resources is going to run into other software that has been designed in these last 20 years to
protect the forest?
To thwart such an activity. Correct. Because we've been able to identify all of these individuals that are stakeholders in these various resources. So when the Panama Canal was built, it proportionally was nowhere near as big an effort as like getting us all onto trains. But nonetheless, the thing was when they cut down those trees for the Panama Canal, it was just an economic boon to those people that titularly owned the land. But the locals that had to live with the pollution, the loss of the habitat, the destruction of the wildlife, the killing off of all the animals, the destruction of the water and everything, they simply didn't matter because they were unknown. At the time that was going on, the larger mass of our population in our society did not know or care that there were several hundreds of families or thousands of families that had been living as subsistence foresters that are kicked out of their way of life, etc. But now we know all of these things, and we have all this level of interconnection. And so you're going to see people that are in the climate side of things saying, hold on a minute there, we can't do that. We can't cut down these forests because these forests provide us with oxygen, and we're using these oxygens to offset carbon taxes that are being leveled on the state over here, right? So now we're at the point of software is eaten the world, and it's eaten our social dynamic, and is now coming back to battle itself. And so basically, I expect everything in a general sense to grind down, so to speak, over the next few years as we go through these larger shifts within the technology itself. And this is why, at the moment, my perception of what YouTube and Google and these kinds of guys are doing, however horrific it may be, is nothing that I really allow to intrude on my thinking, because I know it's momentary. It's going to be fading really fast. And I can think of 3 different technological paths that allow Google and YouTube to be the new MySpace in less than 18 months.
Yeah, I want to get to that a little later. Okay?
Sure.
But I have to comment here because, this sounds like the digital version of how the Third Reich was organized. In case people don't know, Hitler, it was probably not an accident. He, opposite of Soviet, who had a very clear bureaucratic hierarchy, Hitler made sure that his number 2s, and he had many number 2s and number 3s, at different times, they were altering who was more powerful. So it was a very complicated and chaotic kind of hierarchy in that.
Right.
I mean, everything was from up to down. But when they were infighting and bickering, licking his behind, who was going to be the most powerful under him, that was an ever-going, never-ending power battle. And that changed from time to time. Now Himmler was on top, now Goering was on top, now Bormann was on top. But this sounds kind of like the digital version of that. Different systems colliding with different interests. First off, no wonder all these AIs you can interact with online always become Nazi. They had to pull them. But this means that probably that the brute force will win, whichever system is the most powerful. I don't think it will only cancel each other out. It will have to be some kind of brute force winning there. And you said in your example, you were using an example where you're assuming good intentions, but that's a gone time. Now it's just power and money. That is the intention. That is the oligarchs. So I'm kind of relieved that their methods, the tools of being more efficient actually slows down and backfires on them.
It does, because the level of precision. So, we see it. The first boats were made by crudely hacking out a canoe, and you could do it in record time out of a single log. Once we start intruding with bigger and better tools, humans want to have a better level of product, and it takes longer. And then we get into the idea of craftsmen, where you deliberately take your time to do a high quality product, which is not necessarily going to meet your goal any better. Mm-hmm. So we have to look at this. I've been going through Baudrillard, the Frenchman, Jean Baudrillard, the postmodern philosopher. Mm-hmm. And some of his things that he was saying about the consumer society are still quite accurate, and in fact are proceeding along. So I've eliminated from my vocabulary the idea of winning. So I don't see populism winning over globalism. Okay, I see things changing, and I understand that we are living in the materium, and the materium is not the realm of permanence. There's nothing permanent here. The only thing we have here that is
transformation. That's
change.
True. That's the only permanent thing.
Is change. Yeah. Correct. Is change, and it's constant. So that being the case, I'm looking for the future to evolve into what I called sci-fi world, and I tried to describe it as well as I could, but I didn't want to dwell on some of these aspects. But in sci-fi world, it's very much a case of like Blade Runner. okay, the movie. In Blade Runner, the Blade Runner universe, there was all kinds of dictatorial crap going on the planet Earth and billions of humans, but we had this off-world safety valve where if you were a particular type and things got too oppressive here, you could just go off-world and make your own future. Okay, the idea of the frontier. And so the frontier isn't necessarily a big part of the United States and, in fact, even Norwegian history, because the idea of a frontier drove so many Norwegians to leave Norway and come to the Pacific Northwest in the early part of this last century.
Plus, it sucked. Yeah, it sucked here. That's
well, okay, but that's part of it. See, as long as you got that safety valve, you can keep up the suckiness longer, right? It's when you don't have the safety valve that you get the yellow vests rioting, and the suckiness reaches a point where everybody's got to go absolutely crazy. Now, in addition to that, we've got energies from space that are aggravating all of this at this same time. So I think that this is part of a cycle within the materium, and it is one of our challenges as humans to understand that we are living in this stew of energies that are making our brains and our emotions not necessarily under our own control in any given moment. And we'd better have some kind of referential self-checks going on to make sure we don't go batshit crazy as everybody else does, right? But under the circumstances, we've got a weird situation here where sci-fi world is going to evolve. There isn't going to be a clear winner. We're going to still have globalism because it's necessary that our species be global because we've surrounded the whole globe.
Yeah, but globalism is more than just internationalism. Globalism is a centralized global power, and I don't think that's necessary.
No, but it'll take us a long time to erode it. Okay, it'll take us a long time to erode the emotional underpinnings within the social order, at least another 3 generations, I think, before the royalty in England is gone and royalty in England's, the idea, nostalgic longing for it starts to fade. Okay. Right. And so under those circumstances, we're looking at 60 years for that to happen in our rapidly moving environment. And so over the course of this next 60 years, as we get rid of the royals and emerge into this next new phase, bearing in mind it'll be 2061 before the sun starts into its next barycenter form of activity to get us out of the cooling. So we're in for a long run here. And hang
on. That's so interesting, because I just read a very interesting NASA report or something about that the Earth's orbit around the sun isn't circular. It's wobbling. No, what you could say? It's like I don't know the English word, but sometimes we are further away, sometimes we are closer. Could that explain why the sun, I remember in my childhood, a yellow sun?
Actually,
not a white sun?
Conceptually, you're correct, but it's not just Earth. Okay, we had a yellow sun in our youth, and we have a white sun now, and it may be more blue-white 60 years from now. Wow. What's going on is exactly that. It's not that the Earth is revolving around the sun in any way, shape, or form. It is that there is this intercomplex dance between the sun and all of the planets. So the sun's own twisting and moving through space is altered by the mass and momentum of all of the planets, and it is corkscrew fashion. So the sun itself is moving through space in a corkscrew fashion because of the irregular distribution of mass through our solar system, with the heavy Jupiter and Saturn, and then all of us little guys like Earth, right? Mm-hmm. And we're not all equally balanced. And that's what's causing the changes in our sun, as well as it going through different kinds of interstellar media. Yeah. Okay, but it does change.
It itself, yeah.
Yeah, okay, so here we are in a period of time when we're going to be going into solar cooling, Earth cooling, and all the planets cooling. There's going to be many, much more general darkness and grayness, as though we were living under a continuing haze of chemtrails, a lot of which will be natural, though. Mm. And during this next period of time, our social order is going to shift and alter itself as software gets better and better and more invasive in everything. It is a good thing.
Like the Chinese system of social points?
Correct, but it's also got to go. But also at the same time, the software is being pushed down further into our material environment, and also in the sense of it's your refrigerator becoming connected to the internet, that kind of thing, right? But also the software is being expressed upward in the sense that you've got the batshit crazy crews trying to blend humans and software via things like Neuralink.
Yeah, we've debunked them already. Yeah.
You're right. And I wonder, like I put out on Twitter today, I wonder what's going to happen for the first person that gets into Neuralink, jacks into the net, and then does a couple of seriously heavy tokes off of DMT. What happens to the net then? Anyway, though.
It should be mandatory for all programmers to go through DMT.
It should. And we would have much better software, right? But in any event, though,
no, maybe then it would become sentient, so maybe not.
There's the rub, though. See, it's not possible. I mean, that's a fantasy.
I know. It was a joke. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I understand. But the problem is, so many people actually believe software can be sentient and that AI is thinking, right?
Yeah. No, but listen to our consciousness shows, folks. Okay, so we don't have to rehash it today.
Right. But
it is very interesting.
And here's one key part that almost everybody fails to understand about. They look at a computer and they see it sitting there. Nearly 100% of the time, all computerized devices are doing the same exact thing, and that is looping waiting. They're in a loop, that basically says, while nothing has happened, go and check the keyboard. While nothing has happened, go and check the keyboard. If something happens on the keyboard, do something that the human wants. But while you're waiting, go and check the keyboard. And so it does this infinitely, just like your digital watch or the timing circuit in your phone.
Right.
It's not sitting there waiting for you to ask what time it is. It's continually looking at the little fluctuations 32,000 times a second of that piezoelectric crystal.
Except if it's in dwelling mode, right?
No, even then it has to continually always check the crystal to see what time it is and maintain its length there.
Right.
And if the timing crystal of the computer breaks, basically the whole computer shuts down because the software needs this universal reference of what the date time is. It gets really interesting when you start doing things like because I was so fascinated with time and I really delved into it and dwelled on it in so many different ways. I had timing issues with computers back in the day when I was writing my Vortex program that allowed me to read up to 2,000 words per minute on computer screens. And I had to really work to coordinate the hardware and the crude monitors at the time to get all this to happen because it would break all the time because of its just the nature of the connection and the latency and so on. And these days it's ever more so because, you turn on a device and if you've got Wi-Fi, the very first thing the device needs to do is to find out what time all the other devices think it is. Because maybe this device, maybe your treadmill has been asleep and when it's in sleep mode, it doesn't have the energy to continually check its clock. And therefore, the software programmers decided that the way to do this was when it powered on, that it would seek the time signal being sent over Wi-Fi and coordinate and make sure that it had two good signals and then decide that was the time. And see, so technology for me is quite fascinating because I know how all this stuff works. And so I know where there's latency. I see where there's potential. Okay. And I'm a wacky individual. This is acknowledged pretty much. But so some of the things I delve into include the, let me just say that I will occasionally indulge my interest in the dark side of digital stuff. Okay. Of human digital interaction. And so just like the British. All right. So the British are not, we don't think of I guess people do think of the British as a murderous group of people because they've invaded 140 countries.
But right? Not everybody have their pet bad guys like you do. The royals. But no. I mean, even the British people, right? They went along. Oh, right.
They invaded all the countries for the royals. Okay, but I was just going to say, I've actually, of all of the Brits that I've ever met, I've never ever thought any of them was actually a murderer. Okay, but of all of and I've met a lot of British guys. I worked in London and met Brits in Germany and this kind of thing.
Not so many Brits in London, actually.
Well, that's the case these days too.
Yeah.
But in any event, the British guys that I've always met culturally share this rather curious fascination for murder mysteries. All right,
Right.
it's just endemic in their culture.
I mean, it's a cradle of murderer fiction.
Exactly. And so, but the nature of our structure here is that these days, for me, it's not murder mysteries; it's the dark side of the digital world.
Right.
And so, I will do things like appropriately guard my machine, and I'll go out and see what's on the dark web. Mm-hmm. And also, I'll do things like involve myself in hacking communities. And you see just how vulnerable, from seeing things from that viewpoint, you see just how vulnerable our technological social order really is. And so the idea of winning, the idea that the powers that be would ultimately win and we would get into a TV kind of world where everybody's living in, lockstep, Borg-like self-imposed sort of prisons, I think is rather bogus. Because when that technology is going to be used to impose that, the technology has so many limitations, so many points of vulnerability that it is laughable. And I will tell you about war kitties. Mm-hmm. Okay, you have cats, right? Mm-hmm. Okay, did you know that there are people that are weaponizing kitty cats?
I'm not surprised they're weaponizing dolphins and everything else.
But I'm not talking about military. I'm talking about people.
Oh, wow.
Okay, so not organizations. I'm talking about people from this point on here in this little part of our discussion.
Okay. You got my attention.
Okay, because I'm talking about just guys down the road. All right, so I'm talking about guys just down the road from you that may indeed be weaponizing their kitty cats. Now, initially, they're going to weaponize the kitty cats for reconnaissance. And then maybe at some point they might,
that's so clever.
And then maybe they might actually weaponize those kitty cats for packet delivery in terms of, a delivery of an attack. All right. And you can do this easily. And I know people that are doing it with dogs and even one guy that's trying to do it with a bird.
With dogs, okay, I can get because they can be trained from going from A to B. Only problem is they're not allowed to roam freely here. But how on earth will they make the cats go from A to B?
Well, there's the thing. It's not, I don't know. Okay, so the interaction between the human and the cat is not within my understanding of what's going on here because I was much more involved in the harness that was put on the kitty cat. Because this harness was filled with hacking devices. It was like a Wi-Fi pineapple, so it could gather SSID signals from all the open Wi-Fi networks. It was carrying a okay, I won't go into the specifics, but it was carrying what amounts to a Wi-Fi jammer, okay, that could be remotely activated on a non-Wi-Fi signal, which of course implies cell signal, all right? So it's basically, you can make kitty cats, you could actually, if you wanted to, it's a horrid thought, you could make an animal into a walking bomb, and it will happen at some point, right? The IDE will be strapped to an animal and sent into a population area and detonated remotely just because humans are fucking batshit and the social pressures make us so because we don't have the frontier to escape to yet, right? Yet. But right now, people are innocently, and I say innocently because they're not causing the cats any harm, nor necessarily any individuals any harm, are weaponizing kitty cats. And I know of a guy that has a service animal, and I've never met the man or anything like this. I know of him online, but he's got a service kitty cat that wears this cute little vest that is a snooping device. And he's actually making a living snooping for people in legitimate kind of circumstances. And I won't go any further than that, but basically what he does is he goes to organizations that have reason to be snooped upon, that he's paid to do so. And he goes in with his little service cat, he's standing there talking or whatever, and he may let the cat wander around. And while it's wandering around, it's picking up all of this digital information. It's sort of a way of like social engineering without it, because he's not, the guy himself is innocent looking. He's not carrying any kind of hacking gear. Yeah. He's not going to set off any kind of alarms, but the little service vest on the kitty cat with its little metal buckles, gets it through the checkpoints and so on and so forth, right? So people are becoming quite inventive about all of this. And of course we see the same thing being done with drones. And,
drones was my first thought.
Yeah.
But cats are like land drones, because I've seen like night cams, they put on them. And then you're shocked when you see, especially male cats, they roam huge areas. And if they claim those areas, they will guard those areas. So if that's next to a building that has some secrets, attach it and make him work for you. And by the way, I bet they got the idea after they saw, after the dawn of internet, because what has dominated internet? Nothing more than kittens, right?
Videos.
Yeah.
You're right.
And they are often carrying via virus and whatnot, so that's the digital version of it. So,
right. Well, hey, by the way, just as an aside, just as a funny aside, so, you actually, at some point, we're speculating this is not ever going to happen, but at some point, AI from some space aliens becomes sentient, and it comes here in its spaceship, and it parks itself over our planet, and it jacks itself into the internet. It's toast. It's going to spend the rest of its existence watching cat
if
videos.
it get viruses and cats, yes. Well, I was thinking, good for them, just like good for the poor YouTube controller who has to watch my entire video. By the way, do I get counts from those guys watching my video?
No.
Damn.
And see, okay, so here's how, getting back to some of those algorithm things, right? Here's how you, as a YouTuber, can maximize your interaction with the algorithm. Always pay attention to, first off, the notices that YouTube sends you, and go and read the back paper discussions about what the algorithms are being made to do. So, for instance, you might find a strategic economic advantage there, and I'm going to tell you one right now. You do long-form videos, and you do a massive amount of editing on your videos to produce really quality work. And there's a huge, giant area you're missing, and that is that as you're going through in your normal editing process, you're going to add an extra step of work here, and that extra step of work is to cut out a dozen, say a goal of, say, 12 or 20 4-minute sections out of all of your videos, 4 minutes or less. Sometimes even 2 minutes or less is even better. And you cut these out and upload them as standalone vids with their own title, their own description, and that's where you have to make a template and it becomes something of work. But these 2-minute vids will get you something that is now key to the algorithm, which is completion. Okay, the algorithm now understands that it's necessary to care about how far into a video a human watches it, because this is the only real key determiner for whether or not it's a human watching that video or a bot. And the advertisers are really pissed at YouTube and Google because they've been spending tens of millions of dollars to individuals that simply own racks of phones that are dialing in and watching the videos, not humans.
Yeah, the bots. I want you to take that on in part 2, actually. We soon have to take a break. But
yeah, sure.
I have to say, I have one more topic. And of course, we can't have Clif High on without throwing a woo-woo bone to the audience, right?
Okay.
So we're going to get back to the popular Antarctica thing. But go on with the advice.
Okay, so anyway, so the advice here is that what you want to do is you want to take your 2-hour-long video or even anything over a half an hour, all right? Because the statistics are that most videos are not, if a video is going to actually have views, if those views are going to be significant, most of those views will terminate in 1/2 hour or less. And that's because of not only the attention span, but also the time limits that people have for doing this kind of thing, watching videos.
Right.
Also bear in mind that 80% of all the people that watch videos are male, if you're talking about YouTube.
Yeah.
And so this really does intrude on their time schedules. So just in a general sense, the male will commit to that hour, 2 hour, 3 hour long form video because he loves that stuff, right? But he's only one guy, and you're only seeing one guy watch your video over those 3 hours. It's actually much better to have tens of thousands of people watch 2-minute sections out of those videos and have that one guy still watch that video really long. That's the ultimate thing for the algos. And that's why you see Joe Rogan. Okay, Joe Rogan is the epitome, the ultimate, the penultimate
of long form, yeah.
Long-form broadcaster, correct, podcaster, right? And you'll note that he does the JRE clips. Yeah. And those clips are out there continuously because not only are they loss leaders, but they are their own entity in the algorithm's understanding, and that is the key element. So if you do that, if you were to put out a 2-minute segment that had some pithy, witty kind of bit of information to impart to your audience, and it was watched, then all of a sudden you don't have a video that got watched by 10,000 people all the way through. you've got 2 videos and a combined total viewership of maybe 100,000 because it's easy for people to watch a 2-minute video, right?
Yeah. No, we tried something similar. We put 5, 10, 15 minutes clips, but I think the problem is we put it on a separate channel.
Oh,
and
no,
that was after they rigged the system. So the new channel is like all the new
fighting on its own.
YouTubers.
Right.
Yeah, it can't.
Right, it's fighting for its own. Right.
Yeah.
No, you need to build up a brand presence for the algorithm as well as for your own audience. How are they expected to find this other channel, right?
Yeah.
Okay, plus, the thing is, the way to do that is actually to stay within your channel and to create multiple playlists. Playlists are interesting, and insofar as the algorithm is concerned, they're a double bonus for the creator, okay? Because the playlist itself, just clicking on the playlist to see what's inside it, so you put a really good title on your playlist and a good thumbnail and sort of a clickbaity kind of thing to draw people to look at it. And just the people that open it up are still counted as views, even if they don't watch any of the videos inside it. And then the way in which playlists are advertised or put up for advertising provides a larger word bubble. And so you get potentially more advertising on those and more people bidding for advertising on your videos. Now, let's also divert and say right now, I don't know for a fact that anybody in YouTube as an employee is gaming their own company's system, but I think that it's entirely possible that advertisers are being ripped off at so many different levels, one of which is that individuals within YouTube are manipulating this system and using their own channels to rake in advertising dollars, and the advertising is basically wasted, right? And so when you as a small channel guy get in there and you create this kind of a buzz, so to speak, and you're what they call trending or growing, you get more people bidding in on the words that you use. Unfortunately, you don't get more money.
No. The classified space program vid that took off. Hasn't it just kept it at bay because we didn't release anything else that month. So yeah, I noticed that. Even though it's almost, I think it's the most popular vid ever in terms of our channel. But you said in another show, you said sharing would come back and generate. Then I wondered,
correct,
do you mean only sharing on YouTube, or do you mean sharing across all social?
No, sharing across all the social media because of the common fashion stuff here. So here's the deal. I discovered early on that I could, in terms of, I was doing the research for writing the book on dominating online advertising, and I was actually advertising on YouTube and running experiments and advertising on Twitter and running experiments. And I discovered this mechanism whereby I could take and link, so to speak, in the minds of potential viewers, I could link YouTube, my website, and Twitter together into this little circular funnel, so to speak, right? And where everything that I did on Twitter was to always had a tagline to point people over to something that was going on YouTube, not just go and see me on YouTube or not just my YouTube channel identity, but an actual video and a few words about why they should go see that video. And then when I did videos, I would make a point of referring people back to the website, discuss the contents of the website, and also refer them back to what I tell them you could keep up with the new stuff on Twitter, such that there's this impression created within the mind of the audience that they want to be actively involved with all three and monitoring all three, right? And so the same person, from my perspective as a creator, the same person is a three-way benefit. They provide me with views on Twitter, which raises my profile there. They watch my videos on YouTube, which may or may not provide advertising dollars if I'm monetized or not, right? But nonetheless raises my profile within the algorithm there. And they go to and see what's going on my website, which raises the presence of the website in terms of total number of hits. And you'll see that people understand some aspects of this, and they, like old style marketers, will continually hype on it as though it is meaningful in and of itself. And so some of the people in YouTube woo-woo land like to say that, well, geez, look, I wrote this article and in 24 hours it got 333,000 views and put it on my website, right? Okay, and that's fine. That's great. But unless that article is doing something to direct those views over to your other social media. If you are using those social media as part of your income generating strategy, then you've missed a really key tactic, because you're simply dealing with these things as though they were isolated. And so, for instance, the video algorithm over at YouTube that monitors people watching my video, it knows where they come from. So it knows if they're coming from Twitter. Twitter doesn't like sending people to YouTube, so it knows and does everything it can to try and keep videos on Twitter in order to keep you on Twitter.
And Facebook lost so much people going over to YouTube that they made a new feature that says that now you can't just click on the video and play it anymore in the post. You can do it in the comment field, but not in the post, as a way to stop people from actually going or just being on Facebook, watching YouTube through Facebook.
Sure. And this is exactly the point, because they want you there because they've got advertisers that are actively bidding for your eyeballs. And if you take your eyeballs over to YouTube, then they've lost that. And so the ad revenue for each dollar goes down. It's a weird kind of a world we live in, because Baudrillard is quite correct that the consumer society does not necessarily, or should not be considered as simply consuming goods, but rather we should consider ourselves as being enmeshed in a system of objects. And we are an object within there. Not only are we sold by YouTube and Facebook and all of these other guys in terms of the data we generate, but our attention is being sold to the advertising being presented to us, and you and I right now are actually participating in and enabling that entire system. And so we're culpable, right?
But we are subversive, at least.
We are indeed. Okay, but there you go. Are we or are we not? I mean, when you think about it,
right? It's a paradox.
Well, no, so the world is not either or. It is both and.
Yes.
Okay, so it is not an atom, it is a wave. Light is not a particle, it is both a particle and a wave, depending on how we want to look at it. But so we're inextricably linked. We can't alter. We can alter the nature of what we're involved in by our actions, much the same way that a fish alters the environment of the ocean by the movement of its fins. Okay, only in our case, we have this extra added advantage that we could, if we were smart enough or lucky enough or clever enough, come up with some way, because of our digital interconnectedness, to make all of the fishes in our ocean move all of their fins all at the same time, all in the same direction, and thus change the whole planet. So we're at that level, but we nonetheless cannot extract ourselves from the ocean in which we swim, and we should really recognize it, and I think use this paradigm to inform and educate our understanding of what's going on.
Which we kind of are doing now, and so we are both. But I'll still say that some people online there are either or.
No. Okay, they're both and they just don't understand it yet.
Yeah, I know. But my goal is to crack that false dichotomy.
Right.
Anyway, now people, you understand why I always am imploring you to share our stuff across the line, all over online.
Yeah. Okay. Now, hang on. I've got to go and caffeine up. But
oh, so you're also a consumer of coffee, then? I take it.
Oh yeah, I love this stuff. In fact, I've got it bad, guy. Okay, so I'm a real addict. When I was smoking cigarettes, I was addicted to French and then ultimately African tobacco. Very high nicotine content. Well, I don't smoke anymore. I stopped that business, but I still drink coffee. Of course, I'm addicted to the goddamn light roast whole bean estate-grown Kona and Jamaican Blue Mountain.
Wow.
Exactly. Like the pure stuff,
well,
You're
preaching to the choir, because Norwegians are statistically the highest coffee consumer population. So
right.
Okay, you just need to make one last comment here.
Yeah.
You saw the mail I sent you. If people don't know it, there's this old Richard Hoagland thing, Face on Mars, right?
Yeah.
Now it's a goddamn... I've heard rumors for actually for 20 years there was a face at Antarctica, but I've never seen it. I thought it was just a bullshit rumor. Now it's out there, and I haven't shared it. Maybe if you share it on your Twitter, people can find it, because people can look it up.
No, it's all over. Linda Moulton Howell, everybody's got it now.
Okay, so it's a matter of a fact, right?
Right.
So what do you make of it?
It's a perception. Pareidolia says it looks like a face, but it depends on what level we want to discuss it, okay? Because there's the macro face, and there's now a couple of guys that have gone to the trouble of zooming in on Google Earth to that particular site and looking in detail at some of the more zoomed in areas. And there appears to be another face that's actually carved and sitting within one of the dark areas. Okay, so I want to have it addressed by people like Mars Anomaly photo reviewers, okay? These guys that really know Photoshop and the technology of photography and so on. And then we also have to examine what's going on with Google Earth, because there's the rub. Part of that photograph exists as a face because the area in between the facial features, so like the cheeks where you would see between the eyes and the lower chin, have been blurred out. So there is something there that they didn't want us to see, and they applied a masking cover of basically fake snow over the whole thing, and that enhanced some of the aspects of the face itself. But there is, nonetheless, this relationship between all of those artifacts from our perspective, looking straight down on it, very much like a Nazca line that says that that's a face intended for us to see. And then one other guy with some level of skill, I haven't seen maybe more than 6 of his videos, so I don't know how much skill, has gone to the trouble of zooming in to one of the, I think to the left eye of the face, and he zoomed into the dark area of the left eye, and in the video that he presented, it does appear that even within that eye itself, there's an actual carved out version, a carved out image of what we might think of as a gray alien.
This is becoming like a what you call it, hologram in stone.
Exactly.
Fractal.
A big thing to draw your attention down to it. Now, one would do that if you were on a planet. Okay, so say that you and I were part of an expedition, and you go to a planet, and you're going to be there or not, it doesn't matter, but you want us to find something on that planet, and we don't even necessarily have a grid system to overlay on the planet, and you don't know ahead of time that where you're going to be on that planet when you put the stuff that you want us to find. So you can't even say ahead of time, go to these coordinates and look. So what you do, of course, is you alter the planet itself so that the coordinates become moot and the thing itself is staring back up at us. That would be the large face.
So you mean they scan the surface and they find a specific pattern they're looking for, and bam, there's the mass.
There you go.
Mark.
Right.
He's there.
And it need not even be a pattern. It might simply be a meme. So if we're really smart as a species, you and I could go off to a planet, and I could tell you ahead of time, I'm going to leave you a mark there. And the mark will be related to transportation. Okay. And so I could then go there, and maybe I could draw on the surface of the planet train tracks, because I know that you and I both discussed trains at one point, and trains are a type of transportation. And there you'd see this little drawn on this planet way the fuck off in the distance galaxy, a representation of train tracks as might be seen on Earth, and you would know that that was the message I left you. And I need not even know ahead of time what part of that meme or metaphor I'm going to use to attract your attention, right? And of course, what is the best possible metaphor or meme to attract your attention anywhere in this galaxy other than a representation of your own face?
That's an interesting perspective. So something is definitely there, although it may not be
what we think it is. Correct.
Yeah, right. Oh, it just adds to the, Antarctica.
I know, and it's like that's why I want those floaty things so I can float down to Antarctica and see for myself.
Exactly. Antarctica is like the gift that never stops giving,
Right.
I thought it was a wrap the last time.
Right.
But then these things happen. And I guess we just have to prepare for it. In fact, I think if the TPTB are any smart, they'll start manipulating like putting out much fake anomalies and stuff in Antarctica. One, to milk the attention, it's an attention war, but
right.
B, also to, what you say, disqualify or make
disguise or disinformation, and right.
Yeah, like nobody will touch it.
Right.
Or third, to draw attention away, like you said now, from the real thing. So, yeah. It's and Antarctica is a great meme in this war for attention to get the hits up.
It sure is. It's actually quite incredible. I think next to the secret space program, that's the largest.
I think UFOs must be the largest, don't you think?
I do actually. Yes, yeah. But that to a certain extent is now fading, as you noticed, as the meme shifts over to human exploration of space with these interesting technologies, wherever it may have come from. Right. Mm-hmm. So we may indeed have disclosure. You got the blue chickens out there with their, dementia of disclosure conference. Right. And so they're out there clucking all around about all of this stuff. And it's like, well, we may indeed have disclosure, and the powers that be may ultimately release, floating triangle spaceships that we can buy in used spaceship lots. But we may never, ever find out where that technology actually comes from. And it's quite moot. Mm-hmm. And because from the powers that be viewpoint, maybe they think that we'll just be satisfied with the technology and that they need not put themselves in danger by actually acknowledging where they got it. And that might be true for a number of years. And then maybe 100 years from now, the real conspiracy for everything is not, the power that the powers that be have over us, but maybe the real conspiracy then is about the true nature of humans and where we came from. And so
that's always been a real one for a certain segment of the population, huh?
for me as well, right? Yeah, that's the ultimate secret, because we are a species with amnesia.
Yeah.
And I would love to be able to say, look, we found this ancient technology and it was created by humans. Now, maybe those humans, that civilization is long gone, but nonetheless, these are my cousins, and look what those bastards did. Mm-hmm. Because it's different with the space aliens. That's the external savior myth. We've trashed our planet. It's polluted beyond our understanding. Humanity is dying, but please save us, space aliens, with your technology. Mm-hmm. Which is another external savior. Oh, please, Jesus, come and clean all the pollution out of the ocean with a wave of your hand. Right? Mm-hmm. That kind of thing. And yet it's within our power, because maybe the crap that they have in Area 51 actually was found in archaeological sites, and maybe does represent a pre-Ice Age version of humanity that we're having to recreate.
Yeah. And it's so much in definitions too, like what's a human, what's an earthling. But I'm even thinking more like, let's use a classical Gnostic picture like Matrix, right? So sure. The UFO secret space program, that's all within the same paradigm. That's like discussing anomalies in the Matrix. Whereas this show that we are going to launch soon, so that's commercial for that with you about death. We'll see. I don't give it a lot of hope. I think this show will be much more popular than the death show. But the death show, that's where you're getting into waking up from the Matrix and discussing the real mysteries.
Sure, that's what I call the real woo.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay, while you listen to Bella now, beg for some crumbs, because we get nothing almost in advertisement, me and Cliff will unload our bladder and put on some more coffee.
Yeah.
And we'll see you back in 5 minutes.
Sounds good.
All of our files are free and will remain free. If you like the show, you can show support by donating $1 to help with expenses. Just use the PayPal link on our website, YouTube channel, or Facebook page. Thanks.